171 passengers on an Alaska Airlines plane traveling from Oregon to California were expecting a routine flight. Instead, they survived a harrowing emergency landing after a section of the aircraft ripped away in midair. Here's how the incident unfolded and what it means for travelers. On Friday afternoon at around 5 p.m., the Alaska Airlines flight on a 737 MAX 9 jet took off from Portland, Oregon to go to Ontario, California.
The passengers I spoke with said it was shortly after takeoff when they heard a really loud bang, and it sounded to them like an explosion.
I'm sleeping and I just feel the plane drop, and it wasn't like any other turbulence just because the masks had came down too. So that's when I knew, like, oh gosh, this is something way different.
In row 26, there was a panel that plugs an emergency door. That panel ripped away at about 16,000 feet, which left a gaping hole in the aircraft.
Seattle, Alaska, 1282, we just pressurized, we're declaring emergency, we need to descend down to 10,000.
We know that these incidents are extremely rare. We also know that planes are built to withstand extreme depressurization. So if this case would have happened in higher cruising altitude, it would have been a completely different story.
What happened is that they made an emergency U-turn and turned around so that they could go back to Portland to land.
The plane landed back at Portland International Airport at 5:27 p.m. All passengers safely deplaned, and several were evaluated by medical professionals.
The passengers received an email from Alaska Airlines apologizing for the incident and that they have been fully refunded, and they will also receive $1,500 on top of that.
By Friday night, Alaska Airlines grounded all of its 737 MAX 9 jets.
It was just before 10 a.m. Pacific time on Saturday, and that's when the FAA said that the 737 MAX 9s would be temporarily grounded.
United and Alaska are airways that carry the most MAX 9s.
Alaska said that it had checked a certain number of its planes, and a quarter of them were deemed safe and returned to service.
Several officials from the National Transportation Safety Board arrived in Portland Saturday afternoon to assess the situation.
I imagine this was a pretty terrifying event. We don't often talk about psychological injury, but I'm sure that occurred here.
As of Sunday morning, the 737 MAX 9s are still grounded. The airlines have not returned them to service. So if you're flying with Alaska and United in the coming days, you should check your reservation, and often you should see if your flight is still on or whether it's been canceled. You can also check what type of aircraft you're flying in the flight details.
The NTSB's investigation is in its early stages as officials search for the door plug that separated from the plane.
Our investigation right now is focused on this particular aircraft, and we're early on in the investigation, so we can't make any broad statements about the fleet. But I am very encouraged, again, that the FAA took action to temporarily ground this particular aircraft.